Imagine having access to a tribe of mentors. Leaders that you might have never heard of, but in just an hour, you'll know their unfiltered career story. The bets they took, decisions they made, and the lessons that they learned along the way.
Welcome to the What Makes You Tick podcast.
The fantabulous Roderick, thank you so much for joining us today on What Makes You Tick.
I am absolutely honored, guys, and looking forward to it today with you.
We are very much looking forward to it too, aren't we, Rich?
We are. We've had some epic pre-chats with the fantabulous Roderick. And I just know that the energy is going to be amazing here, but also the wisdom and experience, which in this world, when so many people are recording content and telling us what we should be doing, I think there's a lack of experience and wisdom, which we can almost ignore and try and find the people who have got the lived experience. And Roderick has got a wonderful set of stories and experiences that he can share with us. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. Now you've set the bar so high, but I have to jump really high to get to this bar. So now I've got to find and dig up some wisdom from somewhere.
I believe.
I think you'll be okay. I think you'll be okay. So fantabulous Roderick, what makes you tick?
People. I have been a people person for as long as I can remember. I've always been kind of the big brother, if you will, the mentor, etc. And so it's always been about how can I help others to enhance their journey. Look, I may not be able to make your life easier, but my goal is that you're now somehow better with the interaction with me in that given day than you would have had that day.
I love that. And what's an early memory you have of that feeling of I was able to make someone's day or life better?
Oh man, I can go to so many, but I will go back to high school days, right? And I was an athlete, and I remember there was a game where I forgot my jersey, right? Actually, I didn't forget. I brought the wrong color. I brought the home game instead of
The home game, yeah.
And so there was a person on the team that didn't get very much time played on the court playing basketball. And so my coach was like, well, why don't you just wear his jersey? And I went, oh, that's not very cool that this person doesn't have a chance because of me. So what I did was I wore it the first half, and then the second half, I allegedly had cramps in my calves, so I couldn't play. So guess who got to play? So it's all about making sure. And look, I wouldn't say that life to me is fair. I think fair is not an adult word. I think fair went away when mom used to parse out M&Ms one by one. It's not about fair anymore. It's about finding ways to make things mutually equitable.
What do you mean by mutually equitable? Like, what does that look like in a practical sense?
In a practical sense, it means that it's a balance of give and take. You think about the seesaw, and it sits up high because there's too much weight or too much given on one side. When you find balance, that's when there's mutual equitability. That is both walk away feeling like, you know what, this served well for me and for the other individual.
Amazing. And one other question is, so as a fellow basketball player, what are some of the things that you feel like basketball has taught you about life?
Without basketball, I would not be the person I stand in front of you. That's for certain. It taught me things like teamwork and how to work with multiple personalities. And do I mean multiple? It could be the same person sometimes. You never know. It could be the coach, because you never know who's walking in the gym that day. And it really taught me how to humbly both win and lose, because it's very easy to be high when you're winning, but when you lose, it's another thing. And it taught me that there is a difference between kind of managing the game and the team and being a leader, because leader has absolutely nothing to do with the rules of basketball. Leadership to me is making sure that, again, back to balance, you've got the right people at the right time for the particular situation or play that you're going to run, and then being able to explain to the other folks why you're not a part of this, but that we need you for something else.
I love that. There's so much to be learned from sports. For those who don't know you, Roderick, who are you? Like, tell us your story.
So I started out as a salesperson. I was a BDR out there dialing for dollars, did very well there, got promoted to to AE, went to President's Club a couple of times, and then what do? Promote you to manager. And I said no, and they thought I was absolutely nuts. But I realized early on that I loved the process of selling more than I did taking down big deals. I didn't get excited about, putting the name up on the board and ringing the bell and all that. For me, it was, again, that interaction. And it was also kind of slightly competitive, right? I've got to not necessarily convince you, but I've got to help you to understand how I'm going to help you move and your company move forward. So from there, I then talked myself into my first training position. And I said to my VP of sales, I said, what if I could do two things? One, if I could use the process that got me successful and promoted. And secondly, what if I could get more people going to President's Club than you have budget for? Again, slightly competitive, right? And he said, you've got a new job. I took the job, did very well with it. And that was back at AT&T. And from there, it just kind of blossomed. And then I was at Siebel, eBay, HP, Oracle, Salesforce, Marketo. Before I knew it, this thing was like a rocket taking off. And I got to NetApp and I was talking to my sales leader and he said, we've got a problem with discovery and qualification. Roderick, throw training at it, right? We can't handle objections well and we're discounting too deeply. Throw training at it. And then we've got managers, not leaders. And I go, let me guess,
we're training at it.
And I literally, in a moment of fantabulousness, I looked him right in the eye and I said, you train animals, you enable people.
Wow.
And he said, what's enablement? And quickly I had to come up with a cool answer for it, right? But it was literally the genesis of what we call sales enablement today, 18 years ago. And I was just being a smartass, as I've been known to be, right? And then I started really thinking about this. And I said, it's literally taking everything from the front end of marketing, right? And messaging and positioning to onboarding, continuing education, leadership coaching, all the way out to succession planning, which most companies did not do a very good job of back then or even today. And so then it just took off. And then at some point I said, you know what? Sales enablement just sounds too myopic to me because what we're doing now is creating a hierarchy where sales is up top and everybody else falls underneath. But the problem is none of those sales ever accelerate, accentuate, or close without everyone else. Marketing, product marketing, HR, engineering, etc. And I said, and then I heard this thing called go-to-market enablement. And I went, that's where we are. It's about two things. One, tying the entire buyer's journey together from the front end all the way to the back end. Another piece that gets left out, customer support and customer success, right? It was not enough to say you're responsible for renewals. Now we're like, you own cross-sell, upsells, and renewals. And by the way, you can no longer just be their friend 90 days before the renewal anymore. That doesn't work. And so it was literally trying to adapt what we had done for the front of the house and doing it with the back of the house with customer success. But the difference was I didn't have to teach them how to sell anything. We just have to teach them how to help and how to suggest and how to recommend. But they weren't comfortable with that at first, right? And so as with everything else, it's a process. You take small steps. Otherwise, you build this big, beautiful house for your clients or customers with a short hallway and they retreat out of the back. So now the second piece of that is understanding the buyer's journey. Who buys? How do they buy? Are there committees? Are there buying seasons? And then adjusting all of your sales tools, sales process, sales methodology, I'll say selling motions, and flip that on its ear and focus on the buyer's journey versus trying to just shoehorn them into the way that you want them to buy. I think we're at a point now where buyers know if I just hang out to the end of the month or end of quarter, what are they going to do? They're going to discount. So you know what? I'm just going to kind of string you along to the end of the month or the quarter until some smart people go, well, what if we just make this part of the process instead of pushing you to the end? Why don't we come out with our best deal off top? And then we don't have to haggle and we don't both have to pretend like, oh, there's a dance here. Everyone can't dance. Oh, believe me, That may be the most profound thing I say all day. Not everyone can dance.
Who are the people who can then, Roderick? So I'm curious, right? So this whole, by the way, I just feel quite privileged. I'm on a podcast with the Podfather. I've got the Godfather of Revenue Enablement. I don't know what I am in this scenario, but I'm just really curious. Is you'll be brought into businesses to help them to solve a set of problems and challenges, and like you said, the thing that makes you tick is people. So, in all of your experience, what are those common characteristics that make someone able to dance?
Well, first, it's really looking at this with a broad set of lenses, right? And as I said earlier, when I go into a consulting engagement, I don't want to just talk to sales because I'm only going to get a sales slant and a set of lenses for sales. I need to talk to marketing. I need to talk to product marketing. I need to talk to all of the GTM functions because each of them are going to give me a different slant. Because what I start with, as with most consultants, is an assessment. But mine's different. I'm not looking for commonality. I'm looking to poke holes and I'm looking for inconsistencies. Because if marketing says, oh, it's a 10 out of 10, sales says it's a 2 out of 10, there's our disconnect right there, the very beginning, right? And so finding out where the disconnects are and then doing something that I used to think was unusual, and that is bringing all of those different groups in the same room. And now I become a 4-year-old kid. But why? But why? But why? You say this, but why? And here's an example. And we've all heard this. Marketing says we give sales all of these leads, but they don't do anything with them. What'd sales say? Because they suck. My first question is, but why? And that is, have you ever actually defined what a lead is in your mind, sales and marketing? Have you ever actually asked sales, what is it that helps to accelerate and move these things forward? No, you know what we hear? Well, I know what it doesn't look like. Well, that's good. That and $7 will get you a latte, right? Ask that question, but why? And then what happens is it becomes a conversation. And then the next thing I do is focus on 3 pieces, and that is communication, collaboration, then orchestration, in that order. Communication is all about making sure it's clear and concise to everyone, right? The collaboration is not just are they working together, but do they value and understand the role of each other and how it helps in the continuum of moving the sale forward and creating customers for life. The third is orchestration, and that is everyone has a role. Do we have the right people on the bus? More importantly, do we have the right people in the right seats on the bus? And is there accountability for each of those? And are there, dare I say, revenue focused metrics and measurements? And I'm not talking about smiley sheets and butts and seats anymore, right? And then the last piece is this. There are 3 pieces to success. That is IQ plus EQ plus AI. That's the 3-legged stool now. And if you don't have a balance of all 3 of those, you're in for problems.
Tell us a bit more about that AI side of things. So what are some of the things that you've been seeing over the last few years, and how are you seeing that change how people have to operate now?
Absolutely. First of all, it to me is one of the most incredible creations of our lifetime, because as an younger practitioner, I'll say, we would run, here's an example, we'd run a boot camp, all right? Run it for the week, everything goes great. It would take 3 days to pull all of the metrics, all the comments. Now it's a prompt. It drops it in and boom, it's fixed. Now, most would say that means I don't need as many people as I used to. Certainly, AI is going to take care of and remove some roles. I'm not, ridiculous enough to think that's not going to happen. But it's also going to create new jobs, right? And I firmly believe that prospects, customers, clients, however you view them, they're not asking us to inform them anymore, right? There's content out there well beyond the lifetime of any of us. But what they still need from the human is context. How do you differentiate? What's your competitive advantage? Why you, why now? And what are you going to do for us? And also, where that EQ piece comes in is the one question that most sales folks don't ever ask. That is literally the linchpin of changing the direction and the altitude of the sales process. And it's this question. So, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, we've done all our research. We've talked about what's going on. I understand your pain points. I understand your goal and your vision. What can I do for you personally that you will gain by working with me in my company? Get you out of the doghouse, get your name in lights, get you a promotion, move you up in the organization. Because once I understand that, now I understand how to make you an absolute rock star. You see how that one question changes everything? That's the EQ. That's the context that we still need humans, because AI is not going to ask that question naturally. Sure, you could prompt it, but I look at AI no different than PowerPoint, Excel, and Word. It is a productivity tool that is only as good with the output as what the input is. I'm a basic, simple guy.
It reminds me of when I first learned about the breakdown of the word motivation, in that it's motive and action. And unless you find out the reasons why someone would go and do something, and with you, then why on earth would they? Because otherwise, and I think what most people do is they sort of project onto people the reason why they should go and do something, or assume it without ever asking that question. So I love that you make that deeply personal, because at the end of the day, it's a person making that decision, not a business, right?
Well, people still buy from people on one side. And regardless of what most may believe, a purchase of anything that you buy is an emotional move, right? I don't care if you're buying umbrellas and flip-flops, right? It's to do one of two things: help me accelerate speed, and secondly, make me comfortable. Think about that. It's an emotional buy, all the way up to the big ticket items, especially today where one bad move or purchase can be career limiting. No one can take that chance these days.
I'm curious how your perspective has changed. So you've been doing this for a number of decades now, right?
30 years.
So there's that,
Yeah, 30 years now.
that wisdom piece, right? And I just wonder, how has your perspective around what it looks like to be great in business and in sales changed over the years?
Oh, significantly. We all know the old adage of work smarter, not harder. That has never made more sense right now. But at the same time, I think while we're focused on moving faster and using AI to enhance and drive productivity and profitability, at the end of the day, relationships are the foundation of business. If I don't trust you, I won't talk with you. If I don't talk with you, I won't buy from you. So relationships are actually, oddly enough, in today's era of AI, humanity means more now than it ever did. And so the smart folks are not only becoming prompt engineers, but they're also learning how to leverage AI to become more human and to drive that process of humanity. Because if I go to you, Tolu, and you, Richard, and say, okay, here's how we're going to create prompts for your sales folks and for your customers. Let's call your GTM folk, right? What's that inherently going to do? Give them more time to spend time with people, whether it's people that are clients or people outside of that. Oh, I don't know, your family and friends and colleagues, because you're not working until 12 o'clock at night and they're scrambling. So at the end of the day, if you use this tool properly, it actually enhances humanity. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not utopian and Pollyannish to believe that there aren't evil things that happen with it, right? But I like to believe, at least to a certain extent, that most of it is actually being used for good. Like everything you do can be used for evil, right? That's a given. But I think at its baseline, there's so much good that can come out of this.
Do you think that companies actually care, if that makes sense? So I think it's a really nice argument that, look, actually you can give people more time to spend with people. Do you think that's what companies are thinking about, or do you think they're thinking about, well, we can get rid of people?
No. Well, excuse me, that was for the human side. Now let's talk about the realistic company side. Excuse me. Companies are here to make a profit, not friends, at the end of the day. So what this is going to do now is be able to drive productivity and higher profitability. So there's duality here to this piece, right? The humans are able to do more, but the companies are saying, wait a minute, we're getting 3 times as much because it's happening faster. And whether it's releasing new products, whether it's, stronger and better competitive advantage, whether it's new messaging and positioning, at the end of the day, it's a win. Because again, they're here to make a profit. Friends are optional.
What advice would you give to the humans, right? Because as you said, like there are jobs that are going to be lost. What advice would you give to GTM folk who don't want to be on the side of those who lose jobs?
If you don't learn how to be a prompt engineer and wrap your arms around the value and the depth and breadth of AI, you will become a dinosaur. And we know what happened to the dinosaurs. Especially, and I want to talk generationally, especially to those with a little gray, and we'll call it the seasoned folks, right? Richard, like you and me, seasoned. We're not old. Okay. You got like 2 gray hairs. You're not there yet. Enjoy where you are right now. But for the seasoned folks, we're already discounted because where earlier you said something, and that was that we bring wisdom, right? But when you start thinking about that from the perspective of most, and I won't say all, but most corporations, they're looking for younger, cheaper, just good enough. Our age, we were not allowed to be good enough. We weren't groomed to be just good enough, right? We had to be rock stars. We had to be best in class. We had to be world class. So now what it does, it actually levels the playing field for the more seasoned folks, right? For 15, 18, 20 years, I talked about enablement. Now, enablement really has been the sub-subject of this entire conversation where AI has really lifted. And so what it does is gives us a chance to go, I can take my IQ, my EQ, which is that wisdom, and tie it together with AI. And guess what? The young kids, I was going to say we could run circles around, but now with these verbally, we can run circles around it because we have that experience and that wisdom that we can tie together with technology. There's a couple things I've realized you cannot teach. You can't teach experience and you can't teach height, right? So in this case, the experience is what we have that puts us on a whole nother plateau versus even Gen X and Gen Z, right? So it's an amazing time. And I'm really starting to thoroughly enjoy this age and state of life because as with everything else, it's cyclical. We're right back from being, we were the wonder kids coming up the ladder of corporate to, ooh, wait, but now you're old and you're gray. And now yeah, but remember all those things that I learned coming up the ladder? These kids don't even know where to find the ladder yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just saying.
It's true, isn't it? I think so many people I don't see many people talking about this. We talked about it a couple of times on the podcast, but it's just knowing what to ignore. Like if you don't know much about something and then you go onto ChatGPT, for example, and you ask some questions, you go, oh, this is really good. And you see people like doing these posts and you just go, I know this has been written AI with no thought. And it's just, and people that know a bit more look at it and go, oh, it's horrendous. But you take it for granted and it always agrees with us. And I think that ability to say, this is nonsense, or this is actually the opposite of what we should be doing, or that doesn't make sense for this reason, that the wisdom to know what's BS.
Absolutely. 100%. And even generationally here between us on now, we've all learned two things: how to and how not to. And my mom used to always say, either way you learn, just one hurts a lot more.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I think the other thing that I find quite interesting is while everyone talks about AI will replace us and they'll have agents, a buying agent and a sales agent, and it will do a lot of the stuff without having to speak to people. I've seen more and more than ever before when I want to go and get something or someone's thinking about getting something, they will speak to a friend and say, "Who do you know? What would you recommend? What have you tried?" Like, I want a human being to tell me that this experience will be good and is right for me. Whereas I think it was less, it felt like, I don't know if it's just me and whether you feel the same way, but it felt like that wasn't the case 10 years ago. And it's becoming even more the value of trust in relationships and recommendations is higher than ever before. And I guess, like you said, a great salesperson is that kind of like custodian of trust and saying, I am an expert at helping you get what you most deeply want. And I just wonder what's
Right.
coming to your mind when I say that.
Well, we also, the great go-to-market folks say, I had this experience, but let me talk to someone we've helped with this very same problem. Don't take it from me. Don't have to put full trust in me. Find out what we did with them, what questions we have, what the process looked like, what was good, bad, and ugly. I want to go back to something you said earlier about how jobs are going to go away. And I've got a question I always ask, and I'll ask you guys this. Do we still have horses? We still have horses, right? Because there was a thing called a motor car, and it was supposed to do away with horses because everything was horse driven before that. Then came the car. Folks, we still have horses. They just do different things now. And it's the same with AI. There are things that it will continue to do very well, but there will always be things that it cannot do. And guess what? That's why we still have humans.
I wonder what you're seeing when you're speaking to businesses. What I would imagine is happening is that a lot of businesses are still paying AI lip service. A lot of businesses see AI as this solution, like you say, to drive profitability and replace people. Like, what are you seeing in terms of the consistent patterns around how businesses are viewing the role of AI for good and bad in the way that they're going to build revenue and build their business?
Well, I think there's good and bad that are happening with the companies that I've worked with and talked to. First, it's great to hear and finally see that people realize that AI is more than just Chat GPT, right? Because for the long, that thing came by storm, right? And just took over. But now the downside is the same thing that we had a few years ago in enablement, which was shiny object syndrome. There are so many tools out there. And just because there's a tool does not mean you have to play with it to understand it and use it, right? It's just like the traditional tool stack. Everything is not for every company. And just because your peers, your colleagues, your friend, your nephew created this cool new tool does not mean it works for you. It comes down to, where is your company in the maturation cycle of the company? Don't try and force it. All right. And the other piece is, going back to what I said earlier, your buyers and your buying journey may not be the same as someone else's. So just because you've got 312 AI tools doesn't mean that you're on the cutting edge. What it says is you're confusing the hell out of people, because now I've got to go learn 312 new tools where I could actually be out there closing deals. And I always tell when I'm talking to CXOs, I said, especially these days, new and improved ain't always better. Sometimes doing things the way it works. Now, we can't continue to do all things the way we used to, because one, the world doesn't work that way. We know that. And secondly, in some cases, it will come back to bite you in the butt. So figure out what works well for your particular age and stage and maturation for your company. Secondly, tie it back to and have it as the bedrock of the buyer's journey. And then third, have them grab 2, 3, no more than 3, and become absolute experts on that from the perspective of your client, not because your company needs to sell more things. And if you focus it on them as a byproduct, I guarantee you, you will sell more.
I wonder what your favorite tools are outside of chat that you've got really into.
It's interesting. I started with 2 or 3. Now I've got 13.
Still not
Right.
312 though.
There's chat. I love Quillbot, right? I love Perplexity. I'm playing with this thing called video AI to take my long videos and chop them up into shorts, right? Of course, my favorite above all is Claude. I'm not even a big chat fan. I only use chat when I want to tie it to Canva to create a picture for something that I use Claude for. So I'll copy and paste over, right? There's also Gamma that creates and builds out presentations. So if you ever see me up stage and it's got a black background, Gamma did it with me. And I love that tool because it's taken my game to a whole other level. And plus, it individualized me. If I start seeing a bunch of people with black backgrounds, I'm going to lose my mind. It's mine. So don't go out there stealing it. You can leverage it, but don't steal it. Right. I've also got infography that I use. And that is, I can literally go take a link of one of my blogs and it will create an infographic for me. Yeah. There's also, of course, Notebook LM. Because I'm putting out a new book, I took the overview of my book, dropped it in, and it created a 5-minute podcast for me, right? Then there's Pexels. Now, here's a very cool one. We're all out using iStock at some point, right? To find the right picture. Pexels is actually iStock for people of color, for brown and black. Yeah, I was shocked by it too, Tolo. I was like, what? Right. And then, of course, there's iStock in those, but there's so many out there. And I was like, I don't need all of them. But what I do need is these individually because it's given me hours in the day back. And I'm at an age now where I don't want more. I want better. I want better relationship. I want better time on the couch with my family. I want more time to spend with my 18-month-old granddaughter who just figured out how to say grandpa and has me wrapped up like a pretzel right. I'm trying to I want to figure out how I can keep any semblance of money in my wallet because that girl, the other day, I almost just handed the damn thing over to her. Here, take the plastic, the money, take everything. And all she said was, hi, grandpa. Okay, you win, fine. But no, back to what we were saying, there are these tools. And I love the fact that as I was walking through those tools, and for those that'll see this and hear this later, the surprise on each of your faces, like, I didn't even know that existed. Now and you know what it said? I saw the light bulb go on. I gotta go play with these now. And that's really cool. It's not to say this is the best, this is the brightest, because I don't think there is a best of anything. Because as soon as you say it's the best, some 12-year-old kid is gonna go out there and create something better, right? It's kind of like in our olden days, as soon as you printed something, it was now outdated. Kind of the same starting to happen with AI tools. But when I can give those small clips and snippets of overview, and people like you two who are incredibly much more brilliant than me by far, if I can surprise you and give you something new, mission accomplished. And now it propagates out to your audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to know more about this book and tell our audience more about this book, Roderick. I know you've written a few. So tell us about what it is you're working on.
Well, I'm about to release what I believe is the most important work of my lifetime, in all seriousness. I've released 2 books before, both called Sales Enablement 3.0, which is the history of and the next phase of enablement, which I am incredibly proud and humbled by. But the new one is called Stroke of Success. And it's literally the blueprint for anyone that's currently navigating their journey towards success, showing, what it takes, persistence, determination, and empowerment, but at the same time, how dangerous it can be when there's not balance and self-care and mindfulness. And I say that because it is loosely based on the fact that 3.5 years ago, I had a massive stroke where I actually coded. I died. I got a chance to talk to my mom, who actually died in 1999. She gave me my new marching orders of what my new purpose was. And I was set back once they revived me to come and do exactly what we are doing right now. And that is to help the journeys of others. Right. And it was oddly enough, I had my stroke while I was asleep. 98% of sleep stroke victims never wake up. So I'm blessed to be in the 2% club, that I'm still here. And so while I love sales and marketing, I'm all about AI, I'm all about productivity. For me, my biggest goal right now is to make sure that people don't wind up like I did. We all in corporate, or even as entrepreneurs, we put that mask on, right? And we go, go, go. And at some point, what you do overtakes who you are. And when it does, there's only one way to slow down. And life has a way of slowing you down. I literally could not talk. I couldn't walk. My entire left side of my body was paralyzed. I had to learn how to tie my shoes, how to do a button, how to use a regular spoon, how to hold a cup. If I can help anyone not getting to that point, I have served my life's mission. I have no more bucket list. I've done everything that I want to do. I've been blessed to have an incredible Disney based life, right? And right now it goes back to, what can I do to give back? And I know everyone wants to know, what'd your mom say before you were sent back? I see that look in your face. It's simple. She said, my job is to come back and to touch what we call the invisible people, whether it's the people that you check in at the hotel, the valet when you park, the waiter or waitress when you're eating dinner. She said, your job is to give them one smile that they would not have gotten had they not interacted with you. Simple as that. And it's simply complex, because there's so much behind just that one smile, that one for a moment, they go, I'm human. I was seen. If I can do that, then now that's a part of the book. The rest of the book is all of the practical pieces around it. Because what I found out from the American Stroke Society is 1 out of every 4 people will incur a stroke in their lifetime. You may not have it. It may be someone in your circle, but 1 in every 4 people over the age of 25 will come in contact with a stroke in one way or other. So in there, I talk about how my wife actually diagnosed my stroke. We live near San Francisco. I was in LA at a conference getting ready to speak. She diagnosed my stroke over FaceTime because she knew the process that it took to diagnose it. So I tell that whole process I put in an entire chapter on how to diagnose, how to understand it, and exactly what to do, and how time is of an essence. I put in a bunch of resources for both folks that have had strokes, and also for caregivers, and also for friends of. So it's literally about education and love at the end of the day. So if I can help others not deal with what I did, then you know what? I could go today and I'd be okay with that.
When you look back to life before the stroke, what were some of those like early signs that you might have ignored? Because I think that when I think about our audience, we've got lots of really high achievers, right? Lots of people who push, they're persistent, they've got that grit. But what are some of those things that, looking back now, you'd have said to your earlier self, like, look, watch out for this thing. You need to adjust this thing. What are some of those things?
I wish I could say it's like, bad headaches and my heart was slow. That's not how a stroke works. And that's why it's called the silent killer. For me, as I look back now, it was, we all live at that red line of stress at some point. For me, it's when you start getting comfortable living at that red line of stress, and you can't, or you don't utilize tools to alleviate that level of stress, whether it be meditation, prayer, whatever works for you, but you got to find a way to bring that down. Also, I now have a blood pressure cuff that I check on a regular basis, because you don't know that your blood pressure is high because you live at that level of stress. So that's just a norm for you. But most importantly, when you start missing important dates, I missed my daughter's 8th grade graduation. I missed football games for my son. He was a competitive dancer. I missed those. Why? Because I was jet setting. I had the big organization. I had the, corporate helicopters, the corporate jets, and I've got the big expense report. And I thought, you know what? I'm doing this because I'm making their life easier. But what I realized is the further I moved up, and I got to SVP level, the higher I moved up in corporate, the more they demanded of me, which meant I had less time with the people that I was actually doing this for. And then you start making excuses. And then you start looking and going, like I said, I'm doing this for them. No, you're not. I call BS. You're doing it because your ego's driving you. You're doing it because you like to say, I work at fill in the blank company. My title is fill in the blank. I've done this for X number of years. At the end of the day, none of that matters. It really doesn't. And when you look back, I now look at life differently. And it's my 4 F's. And those 4 F's are faith, family, friends, and fun. Nothing else goes above those. And the hard thing is, the further we move up in success, the further we move away from fun. When we were kids, everything was fun. You played, you met new people, you did all kind of stuff. As adults, what do we do? Hi, my name is fill in the blank. My title is fill in the blank. I work at fill in the blank. And I'm amazing. That's why I want to be fantabulous. I'm amazing. Now it's, what do you do for fun? I now have a bocce ball course in my backyard for 2 reasons. One, I love bocce. My wife's Irish Italian. They brought me into the game, and then her old grandfather kept beating me, and back to the competitive thing. I was like, I'm going to get an edge. I'm going to have my own course, and I can make up and change the rules. I'm going to win. Right? The other thing is, it's the only game I know that it requires you have a cocktail in your hand at all times. That's one of my rules. I do not have fun, right? And I love to barbecue, so it goes nicely with those. So bringing those all together, that now is my new definition of fun. Because my daughter asked me, she's like, Dad, you've been all over the world. You've done this, you've done these things, you've helped these people. What do you do just for you? What do you do for fun? And I looked at her and I said, what is this fun you speak of, child? Right? And in hindsight, that was the moment right before I had my stroke that I had put so much thought into that. And it stressed me even more that I didn't have anything for fun. But I wasn't even smart enough at the time to say, why don't you just go find a hobby? Well, for me, every time I had a hobby, example, I used to do professional voiceovers for narrations, tutorials, commercials, etc. It started off as fun. Then I was like, ooh, I can monetize that. Now I've got a business. Everything doesn't need to be monetized. Find some things that you do just for you and stick to those.
By the way, this really deeply resonates. So my sister passed away at 37 from a stroke in her sleep. And it changed my life and my family's life completely, but it really changed my perspective on life. Because I was like, what on earth am I doing? I was chasing success at all costs, sacrificed my health and relationships just because I wanted to move up the ladder. But I also do remember, this is before that happened, looking at the level above where I was. So I was like a business unit director responsible for like 6 million P&L and 100 staff. Very, very important. But like the next level was VP. And I looked at that level of people in our business and they were all incredibly talented, but most were divorced. It was almost seen as like negative if you were married. Having kids was like, oh, it's going to take away. If you had like a hobby or you had like a side business, it was seen as, it was like, you are all in. And it's not that that's necessarily even what the founders like encouraged in the business. It's just like, that's the culture.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Very much what they encourage.
Yeah.
Contrary.
Like the actual people that run the business were a brilliant husband and wife who were really caring and really wonderful, but it like became that culture. I looked at that and went, do I really I was already giving everything. Do I really want that next level? It made me just question everything, change. And now I've come on the path, which is where we are today. And what I guess I'm wondering is, if we think about the mentality, because we're talking about sales enablement, right? You're brought into businesses to help them to often fix a bunch of problems, fill in a bunch of gaps, and help them to achieve more. I wonder what your mentality is around sales enablement when the business, like you say, wants the absolute most from every single person. But then you also have this perspective, which is, I want these people to have brilliant relationships, brilliant faith, brilliant friendships, and a load of fun. And I wonder how you marry that conflict in your mind.
Great question. First of all, my condolences for your sister, because I know the impact that has on the entire family, right? And now to your question, I've changed, and I'm working on changing the mindset of my prospects and my clients first and foremost. We are not the fixers of broken things and broken people. That is not our job. We're not the junk drawer that we all have at home that has, like, a thimble and a shoe and an old radio battery. That's not what enablement does. We are literally a partner. It has to be woven into the fabric of the corporation. So I always start at CXO, no matter where I'm brought in, because to me, it has to be part of the culture. And culture is what happens when no one is watching. And so that has to begin with your exec staff, and then it has to be rolled down. And then the next thing I do is I start working with the leaders, because what's important to our boss is imperative to us, right? Same thing happens in a company. And so I'm brought in usually on a short-term basis to understand where things are. And I always go back to what I said earlier: communication, collaboration, and orchestration. I don't get outside of that box. I don't overvalue why I'm here. I don't think that I am the end all to be all, or, the prodigal son that's come to fix everything. No. Instead, I'm a partner to help you put on a different set of lenses. What you do with those glasses, what you put on, what you see with those glasses once you put them on, that's entirely up to you. But for me, it's about creating a new set of lenses and a new view of your organization from someone who literally does not have a horse in the race. I'm not trying to push sales. I'm not trying to highlight marketing. I'm not trying to highlight HR. No, I'm trying to make sure that everyone understands and values and then takes action. And that's the other piece. Takes action right away on what I've shown. And it comes back to, if you trust me enough to pay me I was going to say exorbitant, but I don't think it is. I think it's fair. Right? But to pay me what you're going to do to bring me in, it would be foolish for you not to take action on those things, because I'm not just bringing you what I see with you. I'm bringing you best practices for the last 30 years that I've seen and or not. And I'll say, look, you guys can do this 7-step thing, but you can't go from 1 to 7. If you skip 4, 7 is just it's going to break. So let's walk through this piece together jointly as a team. And then I leave, and then I'll come back and check in to say, okay, are you on step 4, 5? Because you should be on 5 by now. If you're still on 3, let's talk about, again, but why? If you're on 7, I want to know how you got to 7 so fast, because I've never seen it happen. Either A, you've skipped some things, or B, I've got a new case study. Either way. That's how it works.
So Roderick, this has been such an amazing conversation, and I think there's probably a part 2 coming as well, because I think there's just so many things that you mentioned that we would probably love to dive a little bit deeper into, not to use AI language, but genuinely we would love to go a little bit deeper on that. But I'd just love for you to speak to the people that you wrote the book for. Who is this book for? Why should they go and get it? Where can they find it? How will it help them?
Absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity. I truly appreciate it. I wrote this for, again, people that are out there and they're pushing themselves beyond, and I'll say human limits, and they may not even realize it until they heard today what happens when you do push yourself that far. I wrote the book for people that are on that ladder and climbing up. And I want you to be able to approach this differently than what I did and others that I've seen go through this piece. So if this is indeed you, or I may see, I also wrote this for, and it's going to sound odd, but the partners of those people, because I actually have a chapter for the caregivers, because I call myself a recovering corporate exec at this point, right? So for those that are seeing this happen, whether it's a parent, it's a partner, it's a colleague, it's a friend, I give you some things to look for and also some ways to approach it with love so that it doesn't become an argument. Because believe me, it's very easy to do it with those folks because they don't think they're there and they don't see themselves there. So I actually say, let's approach it from my side and I can show you what I'm seeing in you. So for those that fit into those categories, the book coming out shortly. Follow me on LinkedIn at Roderick Jefferson. I'm on Instagram at Roderick_J Associates. You know what? Even easier. I'll give you guys my link tree and they can figure out how to find me.
Put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But more importantly, get this book for yourself, because you're going to be, at some point, if you haven't already, you're about to be one of those two. You're either that person that is pushing or someone that loves that person that's pushing. And you can help not just analyze, but help them understand that.
I've not seen a book like this, Roderick. I know we've had a couple of people on the podcast talking about burnout. I know people who've had complications around health and strokes, and it is almost seen as they want to keep it a secret. You know, they might tell me in confidence, but like, you know, we can't tell other people. And I wonder, you know, how much of why you wrote this book is because you're trying to actually just make it a safe thing that people talk about the health risks of chasing success at all costs.
The answer is 100%. Look, you may not ever have a stroke, and I pray that you don't. But that doesn't mean that it's not manifesting itself in underlying other ways. Some people get headaches, some people get fatigue, right? Some people get irritability. You think, oh, it's because it's been a rough week. It may be, but there could also be other complications going on. Or it may be the thread that pulls and it's the undoing for your marriage or your relationship with your children or with your parents or with your friends. And you may not even see it. What I want to do is hold up a mirror to you that you can't move away and you're forced to look into it. Because if you don't look into it and take heed and again, take action, it becomes very, very ugly. You may not wake up one day, you know, with a stroke and then inability to talk. And again, I pray that you don't. But in one way or other, 1 out of every 4 people over the age of 25 are going to have some major medical complications.
I know you have a super collaborative approach to your book launch, which we talked about in the green room. And I just wonder, when you've been speaking to people and sharing the ideas in this book with people, what's lighting them up? What are they getting really excited about?
First of all, to your point, that I didn't hide that light under a bushel and try and fight through this by myself. Right? There's so many, especially as again, seasoned folks or not even executives, just people in general. There's shame. I don't want the world to know this, or you know what? I can't allow my company to find this out because they'll see me as less than intellectually. You know, these people are so excited. Thank you for putting it out there. And what I also get is a lot of shared stories like yours, Richard, that people would never know had I not brought this up. So it's not just about giving them permission. It's literally cathartic for a lot of folks. It's part of their healing process. And it's also something that all of us crave as humans. Community and relationships. You're not just out on an island. You're actually part of a fraternity or sorority. Sometimes, unfortunately, that nobody wants to be a part of, but you know you're not alone. That's important as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What I think would be quite fun, Tolu, is to finish on some Tickfire questions. Roderick, are you up for playing a game of Tickfire?
Absolutely. Let's dance.
Can I ask the first one, Tolu? I've never had a chance to do it. Do you mind?
You can do the whole thing if you want.
No, I'll do the first. I'll do the first.
Okay.
Which is
Okay.
Roderick, let's say you were gonna have your own podcast starting next week, and you could have any guest on, dead or alive. Who would you have and why?
President Obama.
Why would that be?
Simple as that. Well, I was blessed enough to have lunch with him once, and we have a conversation that we weren't able to finish, and I want to finish that conversation with him. Nope, I'm not trying to cure, world hunger. It's purely selfish. We've got some things to still talk about. So if you're listening, you owe me.
That's amazing. I'm very curious as to what that conversation was about, but you don't have to share. Wow. Okay. Next question. What's the best advice you've ever got?
The best advice I got is from my mom again, and she had a saying that went this way: little pictures have big eyes, but even louder voices, aka children are watching even when you don't know they're paying attention to you. So you're always in a position to be a role model.
What's the hardest lesson that you've learned?
How to listen. When I had my stroke initially, I couldn't speak at all. And so I realized that there's a difference between listening and hearing. Big difference. And for someone that gets paid to talk, I realized how far it was from the brain to your mouth when it comes to words.
When people are hiring, what are the top 3 things that you think they should be looking for?
Experience, honesty, trust, and I'll give you a bonus: testimonials of folks that they've done this with before.
For some of those seasoned people that you were talking about earlier, what are the 3 AI tools that you think they should be looking at immediately?
I would say I'm going to go with my first, which is Claude, right away. And I would also say Grammarly, because most of us cannot write very well, me included. Oh my goodness. Thank God for Grammarly, right? And the third one is whatever you're trying to learn next, find out and crowdsource in your network and out of your network how it works best and why you would not recommend it.
And last question, how do you want to be remembered by the people you come in contact with?
It's a great question. It's interesting. My wife and I had this conversation the other day, and it may sound relatively morbid, but we were just kind of reminiscing on the stroke, and we're talking about how I had died. And I said, the next time when I die and I'm gone and we're having my funeral, no one can mention anything about sales enablement. No one can talk about AI. No one can talk about any of the companies I worked for. And I don't want to hear anything about, because I'll be listening. Trust me. I don't want to hear anything about any of my awards. People are only allowed to talk about one thing at my funeral: how they felt when they walked away from me. That's all that matters.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Roderick, thank you so much for being on the podcast and for sharing. It's definitely given me and Rich, I know, a lot to think about and a lot of things that we can go and do from it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm truly honored and humbled, and I'm looking forward to your next episode together as well.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks so much for joining us for the What Makes You Tick podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed having the conversation.
Yeah, there's so much value in hearing other people's career stories. And if you're someone focused on growing in your own career, check out our Growth Magnet newsletter on LinkedIn. We'll put a link in the show notes.
And we will see you on the next episode.